This week in lab, we're going to be studying photosynthesis. Photosynthesis in many ways is just the mirror image of cellular respiration. If this is cellular respiration, then this is photosynthesis. They're kind of, in many ways, the opposite of each other. Now, whether you are just studying cellular respiration and photosynthesis in this particular class, or whether you will become a biology major, the sooner you can connect that life with a capital L, when it finds a biochemical pathway or mechanism that works, it figures out, well, how can I use it in this situation, or how can I use it in this situation? And we really see this very clearly when we're comparing photosynthesis to cellular respiration. So let's get going. Let me remind you that this is the formula for aerobic cellular respiration. With aerobic cellular respiration, we start with glucose and oxygen, and then with multiple biochemical reactions, at the end, we end up with carbon dioxide and water and energy, right? Now, what about photosynthesis? What did we end up with here at the end? Carbon dioxide, water, energy. Carbon dioxide, water, energy. Now, the energy is in a different form. The energy in sunlight is in the form of electromagnetic waves. The energy that's in ATP is much more usable for most cells, and it is in the form of chemical energy. But do you see how the end point of cellular respiration ends up being the starting point for photosynthesis? And the end point of photosynthesis ends up being the starting point of cellular respiration. They're like the flips of each other. We're going to talk about this in more detail. But before we talk about all the biochemistry, let's talk about the organelle that is mostly responsible for this thing called photosynthesis. Now, I say mostly because chloroplasts are an organelle that are found in land plants and in some protistans. Protistans is an enormous kingdom of life, but it does include things like seaweed. So we will also find chloroplasts in them. And this kind of photosynthesis that we're talking about happens in chloroplasts. However, using sunlight to make molecules of sugar is something that bacteria and archaea can also do. Not all of them, but some of them. And chloroplasts are going to convert the energy that's in sunlight to the chemical energy that's in sugar, and it's through this set of complicated reactions called photosynthesis. Let's look a little bit more at the structure of a chloroplast, right? The structure of a chloroplast. And chloroplasts have got two outer membranes. Chloroplasts in land plants have got two outer membranes. Remember the mitochondria, it just had one outer membrane. Chloroplasts have two. But like the mitochondria, the sort of action part of a chloroplast is the inner membrane. And the inner membrane of the chloroplast is organized into these flattened discs, and the flattened discs are called thylakoids. Great quiz question, right? Or midterm question. So this right here is a stack of, almost like a stack of quarters, right? And each quarter is a thylakoid, and the stack of quarters is called a granum. I don't think I have that on here. It might be on the next slide, but in case it's not, I don't want to forget. A stack of thylakoids is called a granum. So that's a granum, and it is a stack of thylakoids. And the thylakoids are the flattened discs. Now, in every individual cell inside of a leaf, there are 40 or 50 chloroplasts. And I wish you could look at them through the microscope. Maybe I'll try and post a video if I can find one. But if you were looking at a happy photosynthetic cell, it would have all of these chloroplasts that are like these little green balls inside of it. And those little green chloroplasts, they're just slowly making a circle around the nucleus and the central vacuole of that cell. They just kind of all drift around like kids on inner tubes on the lazy river at magic raging waters, right? So the sun is going to be the energy source for photosynthesis. You know, back when I was in school, a million years ago, back when I was in school, we were told that the energy from the sun was the energy source for all of the ecosystems on planet Earth. And that's not quite true. Since I was in school, they discovered that chemical and heat energy that's coming from the core of planet Earth powers some of our ecosystems. Sorry, but in general, the energy that comes from our sun is powering all of life on planet Earth, because either life on planet Earth is something that photosynthesizes, like a plant or a tree or some seaweed, either that, or it is an animal or a fungus that lives by eating the photosynthetic organism. Now, when it comes to life on planet Earth, only about 1% of sunlight's energy is actually captured by this process called photosynthesis. And even though only about 1% gets captured, it generates billions of tons of life each year. What do we mean by billions of tons of life? What we mean is, over the course of a year, if you would measure how much growth there has been in trees, how much growth of new plants, how many birth of new animals, how much more algae and plankton there is in the ocean, it would end up being billions of tons each year. And that is happening because of the sun, because of sunlight. So photosynthesis occurs where? Photosynthesis occurs in chloroplasts. Sorry, that slide is weird. It occurs in chloroplasts. So here's the leaf on a tree. Here is looking at lots of cells. Look at that cell and that cell and that cell. You know what's funny? These cells out here on the outside, they don't even have chloroplasts in them. A lot of the cells that make up the leaf on a tree don't have chloroplasts in them, because chloroplasts, even though they use sunlight energy, they need to be protected as well. So most of the cells with chloroplasts are down here inside, kind of in the inner layers of the cells that make up the leaf. And so if we took one of those and we looked at it, see all those little chloroplasts? And if this were in motion, you would see all of these guys are just slowly drifting around. And you know what? I actually don't know what's powering that movement. Chloroplasts don't swim, but I don't know what's powering that movement. I'll have to look into that. So here's what an individual chloroplast looks like with an artist rendering. Here's what it looks like through the microscope. Now, the chloroplasts have got these two outer membranes and the inner membrane. And we know in the inner membrane, we have got thylakoids, flattened discs. We know that they are stacked into little stacks called grana. Granum is one, grana is plural. And then all of that is in a thick kind of fluid, which gets called matrix. You know, a lot of times that word matrix in science is just when scientists don't want to say stuff or goo, so they call it matrix. So this matrix inside of the two membranes, but outside of the thylakoids, is known as stroma. And we will learn that some of these biochemical reactions happen in the stroma and some happen inside of the thylakoid. So make sure you know thylakoids, grana, stroma. I do not know. Stacks of thylakoids are called grana and they float in the stick. So I do not know what was that supposed to look like. More pictures, okay? Chloroplasts, good deal. We will start here at the beginning of the next video.